Greetings everybody, it's me, the Bee, and welcome back to another review. So, Big Trouble in Little China, made in 1986. For me, this was the first John Carpenter movie I ever saw. I had no idea who Kurt Russell was. I did not know of Carpenter's work up until that point. I knew not a single thing. So I remember seeing it on television when I was 10 years old with my dad, and it left a bit of an impression on me because I really didn't know what to make of it. But as time went on, and as I grew a little more emotionally mature, and I came to appreciate the film on a more, adult sort of level, I have to say the sense of curiosity I felt when I first saw the film has not left. And I'm kind of befuddled when I talk about this movie. First and foremost, it is not Carpenter's best film, and I'll go into those reasons a little bit later. But in saying that, it is one of his most eclectic and most creatively inclined movies I have seen. Even though he's known more of as a horror director, when John Carpenter wants to expand his horizons, he should not be held back. Now you see, upon its initial release, Big Trouble in Little China did not do very well at all. It perhaps didn't fall as hard as The Thing did back in 1982, but it was still a very humiliating defeat for Carpenter. And the reason why I feel this film fell as hard as it did was due to the very heavy studio interference by the knuckleheads at 20th Century Fox. Seriously, when Carpenter was developing the film and putting the story together and creating all of these very unique sorts of characters, Fox could not help itself. It wanted to have a very sort of all-American hero and a very sort of, for lack of a better term, whitewashed sort of convention. And that's a shame. Big Trouble in Little China's uniqueness comes from the fact that it dares to turn Western cinema conventions on its head by favouring Eastern cinema. The whole film is just full of wonderful Chinese mysticism. It's got demons, it's got magic, it's got prophecies. It's got stuff that most Western films at that time did not see. Now that's not to say it was the only film that did that, but for some reason it fell really hard. And I feel the reason why that's so is that Fox just could not keep their grubby mitts off this movie. If they had let Carpenter do what he wanted to do, and just occasionally step in for a little bit of guidance, I feel Big Trouble in Little China would have been a far better film than what we got. But let's look at the positives of this movie. First and foremost, it's got itself a really good cast, and you have to applaud Kurt Russell for doing this movie. He and John Carpenter have one of the best working relationships in cinema. They're good friends, and it really does show when it comes to their artistic collaborations. And Kurt Russell is utterly fearless when it comes to Jack Burton. Even though the film starts off as kind of, setting up the fact that Jack Burton is going to be like the big headlining hero, it could not be further from the truth. Very early on, you really get the indication that Jack Burton is not all that in a bag of chips. Sure, he talks tough. Sure, he's big and muscly and has a very sort of bravado sort of attitude. But when push comes to shove, most of the time he gets shoved on his back unconscious. And he lets his friend, Wang, played by Dennis Dunn, do the fighting. It's you don't see that sort of stuff very often in Western cinema. Usually the white hero rises to the occasion and fights the bad guy, gets the girl. Jack Burton does not really do that. Okay, he doesn't even get the girl at the end. It kind of is a very sort of a slap in the face to macho culture. And that's where I feel this film is incredibly unique. It's not afraid to do something different, and it's not afraid to revel in this sort of stuff. Now, the basic story is very universal. When you put aside the Asian sort of supernatural slant that the film takes, there is nothing you can't understand, when it comes to the story. You have the character of Jack Burton and Wang trying to get their girlfriends back from the evil wizard David Lopan, and that's that. good guys saving the girl. It's so simple, and this film is an oddity in many respects, but where I feel it is the strongest comes from the actors. They know the movie they are making. There is no illusion in their mind that they are taking part in a really great action movie satire. And you have to applaud John Carpenter for sort of, slapping the expectation that so many audiences at the time had across their face and presenting them with a very new and very fresh take on the supernatural action genre. Now, that being said, this film, to me, kind of doesn't hold up. Now, that's not to say some of the effects still don't look impressive, and at the time, this was top-of-the-line stuff. Carpenter was bringing in all this visual effect work that was, quite frankly, untested. This was very new stuff, and he was taking a hell of a risk putting this stuff in the film. And, now, unfortunately, and this is just due to time rather than sort of technique, this is no bag against the people who put so many hours in to make this stuff. Time is a very fickle mistress, and when it comes to the visuals in this movie, or at least, some of them, it doesn't hold up as well. And that is a little bit of a shame because it is very noticeable. Now, I'm more forgiving because, this film doesn't necessarily rely just on the visual sort of, mastery of the film. This is still a very, shall we say, comic book sort of movie, and I'm not even sure if that's the right term for it. You have this bunch of, token sorts of characters, but the thing is, even though Jack Burton is basically an incompetent boob, he still sort of thinks of himself as the hero of his own story. And when it comes to the character of Wang, played by Dennis Dun, when you first see him, he's very sort of unassuming, he's, rather slighter of stature. But as time goes on, and as he constantly fights his way through, like, facing down David Lopan and the gang that stalks the streets of Little China, this guy is super competent. He is the definition of hero. And this also extends to the female characters. Yes, ultimately they are kidnapped by the bad guy, but they have a sense of strength to them. The character played by Kim Cattrall, Gracie Law, she's very plucky and she's very confident, and quite frankly, she really can't stand Jack Burton for most of the time. And it is so refreshing when, Burton tries to put the moves on her, but she is just not having it. She is more concerned for the well-being of her friends, and she is seeing the bigger picture here. She sees that David Lopan, played by James Hong, and I'll get to him in a second, don't worry, she sees him as the threat he truly is. And, she doesn't underestimate what is going on. And even though she is a Westerner in a very sort of Eastern environment, she is not an idiot. She is able to see the bigger picture here. And for the most part, when it comes to female characters in John Carpenter films, Carpenter knows how to portray very strong women. He knows how to portray strong women without, pandering to the male nerd sensibility. And I'm sorry, I don't like using that word, but you know what I mean. She is not fetishistic, okay? Even though this is a very sort of hyper-stylized and hyper-real story, Gracie is still a human being. And that also goes for the character of Miao Yin. Now, even though she isn't given as much screen time as the other three principal heroes are, she's still, very much a presence in the film. She has a sense of agency, and when Lopan casts his sights on her, you really do feel concern for her well-being. Now, that brings me to James Hong as David Lopan. When it comes to playing a larger-than-life character as this, you go big or you go home. And James Hong goes big. He goes supernova fucking massive big, and quite frankly, you have to applaud him for it. He isn't afraid to commit himself to the role, and by golly, he has fun. Every single scene he's in, he just chews up that scenery and just savors it. And I always have to find a way to incorporate the quote "indeed," in the Lopan voice. He's a very interesting, like, big bad guy character, and in the hands of a lesser actor who's just like, playing it for shits and giggles, it probably would not have worked as well. So that being said, the overall sensation of the film is this: it is an oddity in the best possible way. No, it really doesn't hold up like when you put a magnifying glass to it, or sometimes even without the magnifying glass. Like I said, some of the visual effects really do not hold up gracefully. But the thing is that the biggest shame about this film is that if 20th Century Fox had not put their grubby mitts on it, this would have been a widely imaginative sort of movie. It probably would have been on the level as the Indiana Jones films. Those were movies that built on the sense of sensationalism, while at the same time incorporating and respecting the supernatural sort of genre. Carpenter has a huge respect for Chinese culture. I don't think I saw a character stereotype, or rather an Asian character stereotype in this film. The stereotypes in Big Trouble in Little China are from the white people, are from the round eye, and it is so refreshing to see a director who doesn't try to, make the Asian environment and the characters gimmicky. These are people. These are real people who are facing the threat of David Lopan, and yeah, it really is a shame that people were not going to accept the satire. But in saying that, as time has gone on, and as this film has gained more respect through retrospect, I am so glad it has finally found the clever audience that this film was made for. And at the end of the day, I think John Carpenter got the last laugh here. It took quite some time before this happened, and immediately after the fallout of Big Trouble in Little China really flopping in the box office, Carpenter went back to his more sort of indie lower budget roots by making The Prince of Darkness. But finally, Big Trouble in Little China is given the opportunity to shine. Despite all of its flaws and the fact that sometimes it does feel like the movie is dragging in places, this is still a widely entertaining film, and it takes every advantage it can to really show you something different. I really do wish I could have been in the audience back in the day and, realize what this movie was doing. I mean, it seems like, audiences don't know what they want. They want something fresh one moment, then they want something they're familiar with the next. It's, Big Trouble in Little China was made before its time, but it still got made. And you really have to applaud John Carpenter for trying something different. He knew for a fact that this film could have failed, and it did. But that didn't stop him from calling forth every single aspect of his creativity, of his own creativity, and the creativity of others to make this movie. So, I am so glad Big Trouble in Little China has finally found the audience it's got, and I'm one of the people who are a fan of this movie. No, it is not his finest hour, but you know what? For what it tries to do, for the most part, it does very well. So in saying that, I give Big Trouble in Little China a 3.5 out of 5. It's not as high a score as I would like to give, because trust me, if I could, I would. But you have to look at these things objectively. And that's what, watching films is all about. Sometimes your opinion will change. But for my money, this is one of the films that you should show to a person who's kind of like new to John Carpenter and saying, you know what, I know this isn't Halloween, okay? There's no doubt this is not Halloween, but this is Carpenter being creative. This is Carpenter being the widely imaginative storyteller that he could be if he were given leave to do so. So, that being said, thank you so much for listening to me ramble, and as usual, I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.